Zoom recording. Okay, awesome. Now I need okay, so thank you for attending How to Get Organized Advocacy Workshop by us at Bike Pittsburgh. Obviously, since it's just the two of us, we can be very casual and just have a normal conversation. Don't let being on Zoom make you feel more or less intimidated or anything. So, anyways, this is basically going to just go through. I just wanted to have like a discussion about basic structures of like bike ped groups, and then kind of just talk about like what I hear all the time are like major complaints from people, and then going through like how you can structure your group, or at least structure what you can be doing throughout the year to like make your like budget requests happen, or whatever campaign you're working on, or like the different things that you would like to get done in your neighborhood, like how you can structure your year to make sure that, you know, starting in January, when basically like the city budget starts planning again, you're also kind of working your group around that same schedule. And then just how to get everybody in your group more involved, and then internal structural organization, which basically goes through probably pretty self-explanatory ways to organize internally, like using Google Docs and stuff. But a lot of times people don't do the work up front to like make it easier long term, and then just kind of briefly going into like social media and how that helps with overall organizational structure stuff. So obviously, we can start with introductions. I'm Anna. You obviously know that I live in Friendship, and I thought that the question we could do is like, have you started any new hobbies or activities during the pandemic? And for me, I have definitely started knitting a lot more. I've made 2 hats, and I'm currently knitting like a buff scarf. So
Nice.
and I've learned to like cable knit, which I think is cool.
Oh, I love cables.
So,
Okay, so yeah, I'm Becky, live right also in Friendship. And I didn't start making jam, but I got all in on jam making this pandemic.
nice.
So I made like a nectarine brown sugar one that's amazing. Made some cherry vanilla, some various berries. Yeah, it got a bit much. And then I just recently sent cookies and jam care packages to a bunch of people because I was like, I need to get rid of this jam.
Yeah, that's really cool. I was like, for like holidays this year and birthdays and stuff, I was like, I'm just going to make all handmade, homemade stuff, since I have like so much time to just sit at home that I would otherwise be probably out doing stuff and like buying gifts. I can
Yeah.
just make them at home. But jam, that's really cool. I've always kind of wanted to try all that kind of stuff, but now I guess now is the time to do it. So
Yeah.
yeah, very cool. Um, so I know that you've been part of a lot of different bike ped groups, you know, just Squirrel Hill mostly, but you've kind of like trickled into like what Point Breeze does and things like that. So I just kind of wanted to discuss, you know, like in general, not like personally what you're struggling with, but like what your group struggles with, and or what you've seen or what you've heard, and like what you think the biggest um things, hindrances, you know, things are in your group. And I just kind of put that funny meme that we made in the office on here because it could be like an infrastructure thing you think is your biggest hindrance, but I was thinking more like amongst your group.
Yeah. And that's hard because I don't really, I like went to one meeting of Squirrel Hill and then either they didn't meet again or I got lost off the email list. And like the only thing I did was kind of the Point Breeze Neighbor Way kind
Mhm.
of campaign. And yeah, that was a big eye opener in terms of like just, how next door can get heated and also like are there
Right.
a lot of people that come out with really strong opinions that don't actually like, I don't know, there's a lot of like, you just want to take cars off the road and like you think bikes should do everything, and there's a lot of like just
Yeah.
you know throwing a bunch of stuff around, and then it turns out that like once they're like, oh, a neighbor way with stop signs instead of yield signs is totally fine. I'm like, Where was this consensus in the conversation? So like I was just like understanding other people's perspectives that are like in some amorphous anti-bike group are kind of like
I hear.
surprising and confusing to me.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Do you feel like in like I guess using like Squirrel Hill as an example, um, like you wish you were kind of joining the group in the hopes of getting more involved, or do you feel like um you've kind of found your role in there, or you feel like they could have done a better job or something like that?
I mean, I like joined with the idea of like helping out with things they had going, but they didn't seem to really like they were like organized enough. They didn't really seem to need people. They're like, oh, we're in the process of making this new bike lane like monitor street thing, and it's going great. And I'm like, cool. I'm like, I didn't really find like a thing that was needed, which is great, but also
Yeah.
it's like, oh, okay.
Like I was ready to do something, but I wasn't sure how to maybe get it started or like what I even wanted to do,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, I hear that a lot. I mean, like, I'm kind of picking on you, obviously, because you're the only person here right now. But just to move along, like, what I'm hearing a lot from other groups, because I go to pretty much everybody's monthly meetings or quarterly or every other month or whatever they are. And when it comes to the actual meetings and structure of a group, a lot of people complain about maintaining attendance a lot, kind of like people come and then they don't come back. So like retention, they are always like trying to boost attendance. So a lot of these groups, started about 5 or so years ago. And right now they call it like a sophomore class. It's kind of like everybody has kind of like run their course, which with this first 5 years, people have kind of like hit their groove. They kind of feel like they've been doing it enough that they have like some sort of handle on it. And so they're hoping to get like this new wave of like advocates joining, but they are not sure how to reach those people. Um, a lot of people seem to struggle picking projects that they feel they can actually make happen versus like just being like, we want a bike lane on Liberty Avenue and then just letting the city handle it. They have, which is like, you can do more, but at the end of the day, they're not the actual engineer, or they just feel like they can't get as involved. And so it's hard for people to pick projects that they feel they can actually do within a certain timeline. And then on the same page, like completing a project is a big complaint. A lot of people want to do projects that might take like 10 years to complete. A good example of that is like trying to overcome getting through the West End Circle, which is like a horrific, dangerous intersection, like over in the West End, like where the bridge meets, like, and East Carson Street turns into West Carson Street, and like that whole area. And while you have to start now, like with baby steps, getting something that big, it is just so daunting that sometimes it's like, where do you even begin? And then kind of like back to the first things is just like having engaged members, kind of like you. It's like when someone new joins a group, how do you let someone feel that they have something to do or can contribute to an ongoing project? And then a lot of times, things happen like the pandemic, and it's hard to just like stay on top of things because so many other things are happening. And it's hard to like really just have that clear focus of like, we're working on this, um, and these are steps A, B, C that we have to do to get to like the final thing. So starting off is just like planning ahead. And this is basically what every group I believe needs to do in order to really feel like they can sit down and get through their year with like a goal ahead at the very end. So um things that like I thought we could discuss now is like, what do you do annually and what are new things that you would like your group to take on? And right now I thought would be a really good time to have this presentation, just because it is the end of the year. And we're starting to look at next year. The city just released their capital budget for next year and their operating budget. So like those are things that people can start looking at. But like, does are groups that you're involved with do anything annually, or things that you think would be nice to do next year?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know of any, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like I've only been involved like kind of at a very like specific campaign level. And so I don't know if there's any like continual things that some of these groups are doing.
Yeah, I feel like the pandemic too has really shifted stuff because, like, even, at Bike Pittsburgh, like, we always did, 3 open streets and pedal Pittsburgh, and that was just like cyclical. Bike to Work Day, like, we had these specific events that we did, and now everything, is like put on hold or like morphed into like an online thing. So, what used to be annual has now turned into virtual or like partially virtual, partially in person. So like there's just a lot of stuff like that. So it is a really good year on that level too, to reassess like what you have going or like what you could do that's more um virtual, like able to turn into a virtual thing. Whereas like a bike ride, a lot of people did annual bike rides, like a family ride or stuff like that, or like walks. And I think a lot of people just don't feel safe doing that this year. But what is something that you could do to still keep people engaged? Something to think about. So the number one thing are like in the planning ahead are these recurring meetings. So as you know, most groups have set recurring meetings like monthly, quarterly, every other month. And to just like set your agendas, send meeting reminders, and being consistent about it, because when you aren't doing those things, it doesn't have as much of an incentive for people to join. um, I know personally that this all sounds like really obvious stuff, but if you don't do it, I think people are less inclined to like attend. Um, I don't know if that's your experience, like with meetings. Like if you didn't see an agenda, you might not be as inclined to go, or being like, is it the first Monday of the month or was it the second Monday? Like I can't remember. I get really, you know, frazzled when I can't remember that kind of stuff. But
Yeah, reminders are key, especially since time has very little meaning these days.
very true. Very, very true. Yeah, emphasize that, sending the reminders. So I thought this might look really like overkill, but I had like made this guide and I can share it after the meeting, which is like a calendar year planning for bike ped groups. And this just basically gives like a framework, suggestions of like what groups can do every month. And starting off in January, which is like just regrouping and reviewing like your mission statement and making sure that what you're choosing to do this year aligns with that. I don't know any group that doesn't align with it, but just to like remember like why you're all meeting and like what really matters to everybody, which is usually doing things that make biking and walking and streets safer in everybody's neighborhood. You can review your last year's projects and come up with a list. If you're, submitting a capital budget letter, you'll want to make sure that, hey, did this project actually get funded last year? Did it not? Like, why didn't it? Is there a way to like turn maybe past projects into short, medium, or long term? Like, say, you did want to get like a bike lane in on a road, but there are a lot of variables in it. And so maybe what you need to request is um, like a traffic study done or something like that, which is what you actually need to be doing in the short term or something like that. And just like reassessing your projects, or like if something didn't happen, why not? Um, and a lot of people and a lot of groups will like categorize their lists and send it out for people to vote on what they want to be sent out for the capital budget. And using like Google Forms or SurveyMonkey is something like that. And then just making sure that everybody at the beginning of the year is like still good on like what the dates and times are for meetings. So then like February, finalize projects and assign roles to everybody. So most people meet for just an hour. So it's really hard to get a lot done in an hour, which is why it's nice to have ways to like communicate outside of meetings. And then there's just like different things that happen. Like I usually host a quarterly bike ped meeting. There could be like an advocacy forum or something like larger, like the national bike summit or something else like that, taking place, which you might just want to be aware of. March is the time to start getting your capital budget letters in, and making sure that you start your campaigns for those. And then, having your monthly meeting. April, the same thing. It's like there's always Earth Day, so it's nice to like plan things around that. May is National Bike to Work Day. That is obviously TBD now. Like it might be Bike to Anywhere Day or something like that. There was open streets. We might have open streets again. You never know. And just like staying on track all of these months. Like a lot of times in the summer, people would rather be out biking, which I totally get and I totally agree with, but it's still important to like at least have like some sort of consistent communication. Like even if you are just sending out an email that people can follow up on or just checking in with different like subcommittees or things like that. um, I think it's good to just have some sort of framework, overarching framework for how a bike ped group functions month to month. Do you have any questions about any of this?
No, it seems like a pretty solid like plan for how this works. Like I'm is this like, you know, something is happening or should happen or various levels among the various groups?
Right. Yeah. I just wanted to like basically give a framework for like tying in different events that are happening along with like a meeting. So sometimes people might not want to have their monthly meeting because there's also like a quarterly meeting happening or like substituting that in, but like it doesn't substitute actually staying on top of how a project is unfolding, or different things like that. So, August, September, there's parking day. October, regular meeting. November, December, kind of just wrapping the year up and seeing how you had done the whole year and then getting ready to like start the whole process over again. And I did this planning around the capital budget letters for the city, but obviously you can, if you live outside the city or something like that, eventually or whatever, there's different schedules that you could use, but I think doing a January to December calendar makes the most sense for most groups. Um, so then like how to get your committee involved. So how's your committee structured? Um, I think it's interesting to see like how different bike ped groups are structured. Like some of them are kind of anarchist in that no one's really the leader and everyone's kind of a co-leader, which I love it. Like there's no right or wrong way to have a committee structured, but it is important that certain people do take certain roles. And I wanted to hear like what you thought of how, your group was structured and like what you thought was great about it and what you thought could be changed.
I mean, for my time in Squirrel Hill, there did not seem to be various roles. So, when showed my first meeting being like, I don't, what's the committee? What are they doing? There didn't seem to be like a role they were looking for somebody for, or like a way to kind of plug in there. Like there was a definite leader and people who'd been involved for a long time and knew how things worked. But I feel like kind of having tasks that can be assigned to people and like roles would be really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like some of the first groups that I started to organize, like when I first started working for Bike Pittsburgh, something that really helped was having everybody talk about their strengths and weaknesses, like as an individual, and then like what people actually enjoy doing. So like I might be really good at public speaking, but since all of you are volunteers, it's a volunteer position. It's like since I do that for a living, I might not want to do that for my volunteer time. So like it could be kind of like backwards or whatever.
Mhm.
So in this next kind of like chart that I made up, I I just wanted to emphasize how important it is to give everybody a role. So, these are not job descriptions or anything, and there's obviously like way more things that people can do than what's just here. But I do think it's good to have some sort of a leader, meaning somebody who can call the monthly meetings, set all that up, and send out the reminders, because that's like the person that's going to be able to like get things going and like follow up with everything. And then having like a co-leader or like different committee leaders to like work on all of the different projects. So like whatever gets submitted, like having somebody tasked to like be the lead on each of those projects. Um, and then, kind of lead out those projects, I think is important to have not only the leader who might not be a committee leader, but just generally getting everybody together and then having committee leaders and then subcommittee leaders to like maybe um, when you're breaking out the project into short, medium, and long term, like someone who can actually, you know, work on all the small little details and get everybody together. Obviously, it's really important to have somebody to do social media. So if you are doing a call to action, like just making sure that things are posted, people are like tagging the right people and doing all that. And I feel like it's just, it's 2020. It's kind of like a given that most people will have social media. And if you don't have social media, like all power to you. I just think it's the best way to reach like people at the city and stuff like that. And, you know, having social media doesn't mean you have to have it personally. I'm thinking more as like your group has social media, not like a personal account. Um, I also put in there like you can do newsletters and even just like tie into your community group at that level if you wanted to just like tag team social media, because it's like everybody's kind of sharing the same content. It's just like what face or what person is actually listening. And then having like a photographer, I think that that always gets like really left behind, or like a lot of groups do a lot of things all the time, but nobody ever takes pictures. Like I always forget to take a picture of meetings, and then it feels like if you didn't take a photo, did it happen? So those are just some things that I hopefully groups can like assign at the beginning of a year. And I think that a lot of people burn out too by always having the same role every year. Like the leader, it is a really tiring job, and there's ways to like make it easier to do it, but at the end of the day it's still a lot to put on one person. And so just kind of like spelling out what a subcommittee is. So like subcommittees give people opportunities to do the work that they are really passionate about. So like within a subcommittee, like um, you can do that specific thing that you really feel passionate about. Like you can be the person to attend the public meeting because you enjoy attending those things, or like be the person to speak up like when needed, or like be the person to write letters to the editor. All that kind of stuff can happen within a subcommittee. And they probably should meet outside of the regular meeting, or at least communicate um, outside of that time. And this is just a picture from the bike plan from like 100 years ago. So oh, did you have any questions about any of that?
Yeah.
So internal organization. So this is kind of what I was alluding to at the very beginning of the stuff that is just very obvious. Um, but I don't think a lot of groups do this from the very beginning. And so it ends up being like, oh, like Polly has the capital budget letter from 6 years ago, but she moved to Arizona. Does anybody have her current, email address so that we can track that down? Has anybody talked, to so and so who shared this other thing? And so, as much as like people might not want to use Google or anything like that, I honestly think that it is the easiest way to get organized and do stuff. I mean, feel free to debate me, but I would say like just use it's like use whatever service is out there that you like to help you stay organized. And I just happen to think that Google just has it all easily in one place. And when you use Google, you can just set up a generic Gmail so nobody has to use your personal accounts. It has like their whole suite of stuff in their drive that lets you, create presentations. I actually use Google Sheets or Google Slides to make this presentation. And it's just so much easier to share things with other people because you can comment on it, um, and just doing all that stuff. Whereas, like, when you're using Words or things like that, you usually have to like download the document, make your comments, save it, re-upload it, re-email it, and it's like 6 steps. And I feel like Google is just like tag the person in the document, done. It just feels a lot easier.
Makes version control so much easier.
Definitely. I even think like Microsoft Teams and stuff, which in theory works the same way, just isn't as user friendly, and it might just be because I'm not as used to it. But that's my experience, is like Google is just the easiest.
Yeah, I've been trying to get members of my lab group to be like, can we work on the same document? Or like trying to get a box and just downloading it and re-uploading a thing with a different date in the title. And I'm like, no, same document. Everybody look at the same thing.
Right. Yeah. And I think it has good like phone interface. So like I feel like I can use it on my phone pretty easily too, which is like nice if you're like trying to do something like, while you're out and about. Um, and they also have Google Groups. And I think Google Groups is also underrated because, um, like while most people think like Gmail, sure, it's great, but Groups is really nice because you can use your personal account, but it digests everything. And so for like posterity's sake, it's like everything's already in the group. So if somebody does move or like something like that happens, you can always go back to the Google group and find anything that had ever been tagged in that group. So I think that like, starting from the beginning to like create your documents for like your meetings and just like all that organizational stuff, like just set it up and just use it and keep it organized, like using um similar words to tag things, like when you're trying to sort stuff, like calling something a picture versus an image versus like a photo, like it's so hard to like find stuff when you're using synonyms and stuff like that. So like just trying to keep consistent language just for the sake of organizing, not for any other purpose, but for that. And I think, like for like getting more members and people like that involved, it'll be a lot easier to just like share your drive, share your Google group, and like everyone can kind of like peruse on their own and like fill themselves in on stuff. And same with meeting notes. Like I see a lot of people take meeting notes in a brand new document every time they start a meeting, and I I think it's easier to just have one document and just keep it all in the same thing and just like write on top of it or something like that. There's lots of different ways, but I find it's like overwhelming when there's a new document coming through all the time and you can't find old things. So just putting it out there, my 2 cents for getting organized from the very beginning. And I think it's really important to just take the time out to do it because it'll save you time in the long run. And now's a great time to do it. So the last thing I really wanted to talk about was like social media and how that can help organize yourself and organize out to like the greater world. So I think it's essential for any group to have a Twitter and a Facebook nowadays because Pittsburgh, it seems, and I've heard this from a lot of other people too, that like Pittsburgh is really heavy on Facebook events. Um, and finding events on Facebook, and a lot of people don't put them anywhere else. So like they might not be on Eventbrite, they might not be on whatever other platform there is, but Facebook seems to just be like where everybody does it. So I think it's important to also have a Facebook so you can announce your group, announce your monthly meetings there, and just have that presence. And it's also easy to share stuff once you have it on Facebook to all the other social media places because it's already written out. Um, I think it's also good to have Twitter because, like I was saying, if you're trying to do advocacy and you're trying to, like, submit a 311, like tag the mayor, tag, any of his staff or your council people, I think that Twitter is the fastest and easiest way to do that. Otherwise, you have to download, you know, other apps or things like that. And it's just easy to follow along with Twitter for advocacy's sake. I know I have a Twitter pretty much just to report 311s. So it's like my Twitter account's not very interesting, but it has a lot of 311 requests.
I didn't realize you could do 311 through Twitter.
Yeah, it's nice because you can upload a photo.
Nice.
Granted, it doesn't get categorized the same way as like doing it through the Myberg app because Myberg you can click and like actually categorize it into the 311 system. Um, but you can't upload, at least the last time I used the Myberg app, you couldn't upload a photo with your 311 request. But yeah, you can just do, it's like at PGH 311 or 311 PGH and just say like, you know, curb cut needed at, Negley and Friendship Ave in the Friendship neighborhood, and it's like pretty easy to do that.
I like literally thought you had to call, which is why I have never done one ever.
Yeah, I mean that is one way. I've actually never called 311 either because
Yeah.
I've always just tweeted at them because I never wanted to like call.
Yeah, no. But oh, the Twitter is so much better. Oh, I'm very happy about this.
And like when you do a 311, it's like you can submit a 311, but you can also tag whoever you want, like your council person in that district, or like maybe the business that's right next to it because they probably think it's an issue. And then like it's nice because I've gotten a lot of 311s like retweeted and stuff like that, which kind of like triggers a second submission. So it's nice to have at least those two things for advocacy. Other stuff are, having a website. Like, I don't know, someday, which probably will never happen in our lifetime, it seems at this point, Facebook might not exist. But, a website will. And a website is nice for those people who don't have social media. So like as a secondary thing, I think it is nice to have a website. It is a lot of work to keep up with, but if you do have a website, you can share directly from a website to Facebook or wherever else. And then you don't have to have an account on a social media site. Um, if you do have like a community group, you can make a Nextdoor account. So like, for example, we could start like bike ped friendship, or whatever on Nextdoor, and it's not necessarily just a community group doing it, which is nice. A lot of one group this year in Greenfield just started their own Strava group so that they could like find new people who might just be biking through the neighborhood, and they thought it would be fun to do their own segments on there so that they could call it like Greenfield Livable Streets segment and like make a special thing. I thought it was cute. I like the idea.
I love it.
um and it also gets like people who are walking and stuff, and while Strava kind of has that elitist like side to it, like it feels like only people who are like like really into biking or really into running or really into walking use something like that. I think it's just fun, which is why I put in the nice to have. And it's easy to set up. And then like Instagram is just kind of, another one. I think you could put like add like anything else on there, like Snapchat or TikTok or WeChat or like whatever else you wanted. You could just put it in the nice to have kind of list. It's just whenever you do take on a social media or something, you have to have somebody dedicated to keeping it updated, because if it's not updated, no one's going to follow it or join it because they'll think it's dead. Like, oh, it hasn't been updated since 2017. Well, I've done this in my life with my life since then, so it's probably non-existent. And then you ask the group and they're like, oh yeah, we have a Facebook group. Well, it hasn't been updated in years, so what's the point? So it's, if you do have it, it is good to like kind of refer back to having a point person within the group to cover the social media. But it's also nice because you can go back in time through your Twitter or your Facebook as a group and just see the progress that you've made or like what happened a year ago and stuff like that. So it is kind of nice to have it for organization, your group or your organization and stuff. We already touched on this, but for my very final thought in this whole presentation is just kind of like, taking COVID into consideration and how people have been changing how they've been meeting and communicating. Um, obviously we're doing this virtually. If it wasn't a pandemic, we would have done it in person. We probably would have ordered pizza and, made a whole night of it. But, things are changing and adapting. And so, in a way, it's given people kind of like the creativity to do things a little bit differently or like try something new. So, I think that that is an opportunity for people to kind of like think about how things could be done differently. I think picking up the phone and calling someone, like if you want to have a meeting but you don't want to have it, in person, like calling someone, calling, your other members is totally fine. I feel like people don't really call each other anymore, but you can still do it. I think it's also nice to like keep meetings short so people don't get fatigued by Zoom or like by just constantly being in meetings or having to show up at a specific time. Um, I know I'm kind of at meeting fatigue through all of this. Um, and just like checking in with people and asking them how they're doing and just not like brushing off the fact that we are in the middle of a pandemic. It's like being aware and just like, if people aren't up to doing something, it's totally fine. But like always asking people how they are and just saying that, we're all in this together. Like, even if you're in a different bike ped group than someone else, it's like, people in the South Side can help people in Lawrenceville who can help people, in Highland Park or, wherever you are. Like, we're all doing this together. So that's that. And then I thought I'd give you homework. So if you feel so inclined, I was hoping to urge you and whoever else watches or attends this in the future to ask whatever group you're in, or if you want to start a new group, to actually set time aside to like do all of this organizing so that you can start off 2021 with more of a direction and more of a focus, because a lot of people, this year was just so different that I think everyone could use a good regroup starting this next year off. And that's it. Do you have any questions or anything that you'd like to say about any of this?
I don't know. No like questions really. Just kind of, thinking about where I want to go or what I want to help with, figuring out what groups are actually doing things, what are not. Like, I've made a website before. If someone needs a website, that's like a tangible thing I could do. So I'm just like, instead of kind of, I don't know, I feel like that might be more to like come up with like, here are the things I can do, who like what adjacent group might need that.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a really good thing to think about. Cause like, I mean, like, as far as like friendships concerned, like I know there's other people in the neighborhood like you who are kind of like, I don't know if I need a group in friendship or not, so like if you are interested in me like just putting you together in an email with those people, like I can, just to like hash out the issues that friendship has, or like I don't think a lot of people step up to help Bruce in Bloomfield. So like, I can definitely put you in touch with him and like the Bloomfield folks, or anything like that. But yeah, I think everyone, is kind of like looking for the person that's willing to like step up and do something.
Yeah. Because I'm pretty good at organizing, but I'm not very good at like coming up with ideas in terms of like, this is a project we should do.
Yeah.
So it's like, if someone has a project, I'm like, can help better at the implementing and the communicating and the organizing, but I'm not very much of an idea person.
Yeah, I mean, like with this, like the two biggest things that are happening in Friendship Bloomfield is the Neighbor Way, like
Mhm.
the Friendship Neighbor Way, which is going in right now, and then the Penn Ave redesign. So Penn Avenue is getting redesigned starting next year, but they're having all the planning meetings now. So like getting involved in that is probably going to be useful in the next like 2 years. Um, but yeah, I can like put you in touch with Bruce because he wrote a whole letter about it all and like what Bloomfield Livable Streets is like stances on it.
Yeah.
So I can send that stuff to you. But yeah, it is good to like think about like what you would like to do in a group versus like what a group needs, versus like
Mhm.
what's already happening. So yeah. But thank you for attending. It was nice
Yeah.
to see you.
I did go run on the Neighbor Way recently, and I kind of happened across it, and I was like, oh, this is really cool.
It's like it's kind of subtle, you
Yeah.
know? Like I don't know what the big deal is about it because like when it's installed, it's really just like paint.
Has there been a bunch of pushback against it?
In Friendship specifically, there was like one section up by like Wine Biddle where they wanted to put in like a concrete diverter. So like in the middle of the street where like a car could like technically cross over, they wanted to put a diverter so that people weren't making like dangerous turns. And so that kind of became controversial because people still wanted to make illegal turns, so they didn't
Yeah.
have to go around the block. But so that kind of got heated, but it wasn't nearly as heated as Point Breeze.
Yeah.
Yeah. And equity is definitely coming up more and more, especially for like ADA issues, which
Hmm.
is obviously like a big thing. And I think we're all kind of like learning what designs can include like or like what designs make things better or worse for people, with in the ADA community. So
Yeah.
it's a, it's a lot. It's a good thing to learn because I didn't know a lot of it. Like stop signs versus yield signs, like for people who are visually impaired, like the height of a tree or the height of a sign or things like that. Um, like the sidewalks, obviously, and being able to hear cars coming um, is different with like stop signs and yield signs. So like hearing and learning all that kind of stuff has been really helpful to like ask the city for different stuff. A lot to learn.
Always.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, well, thank you, and I'll let you go unless you
Yeah.
have anything else.
No, it's good. Good to talk to you, and thanks for the presentation.
Yeah. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.